So my first recommendation to you is sit back, relax, and do not enjoy the flight, but enjoy the conference. We will be accompanied today by members of Congress, senior executives, executives from the nonprofit world, the communication world, and all. We will have an aspect of every aspect that belongs to this country, because that's what makes the difference, not only in the Hispanic community, but all of the communities that compose this American nation. We will also like to start with a congressional remarks with multiple members of Congress. After that, we will have an amazing keynote speaker presentation. Following the presentation, we will be having 2 panels. And those 2 panels will be composed, like I said, from members of Congress to senior executive and corporate and nonprofit world. After those 2 panels, we will have a presentation of how to build a good resume. What do you need to be successful before they call you for that first interview? And those simple things do make a difference. So we will prepare you with that. And finally, we will have a networking luncheon. And that word is really important in this city, in this territory. You need to network, you need to meet the right person, and the right person needs to meet you so that you can make a difference. And we'll teach you how to do that. How? Practice it. So that's why every single one of you has a name tag. So before I continue, I want you to look who's beside you, look at their name and say good morning. Let's do that. Good morning. Good morning. There we go. Awesome. I like that. Good morning. Don't be shy. Now, this event wouldn't be possible with our amazing sponsors. And today we have one big sponsor that makes a difference not only in the Hispanic community, but every single community of this country. And that is Ford Motor Company. At the Institute, we're blessed enough to have amazing board members, not only, as I said, from Congress, but also from the private sector. And one of them is Ford. Today, on behalf of Joe Avila, who's our board member, we have Giselle Cabrera, which is the Community Relations Manager for Ford Motor Company in the Government Affairs Office. So this morning, we'd like to welcome Giselle Cabrera. And before we do that, we would like to present a video of Ford. Thank you. Without further ado, Giselle Cabrera.
Thank you, Juan. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Oh, come on. I know it's early, but we can do a little better than that. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. So, on behalf of everyone at Ford, it really is my pleasure to welcome everyone to the 11th Annual Chile Future Leaders Conference. And I just have to say, personally, this is like coming back home for me, because I remember when the first Chile Future Leaders Conference happened. I was fortunate enough to be one of the creators of the Future Leaders Conference when I worked at Chile. So I'm just really proud to be back here with all of you today. And I'm proud of how far along this conference has come. So thank you for inviting me to come today. And I want to thank and congratulate the Chile board and staff, and especially Chairman Lincoln Diaz-Balart, as well as Marianne Gomez, for their dedication to this organization and really to inspiring and promoting public service, leadership, and education among all Latino youth, among all youth. So thank you, both of you, for your work. And I also want to applaud all of the members of Congress that are going to be here today for giving of their time to come to speak to you all. That really is something special, and you should treasure that. You know, at Ford, we don't just make great cars and trucks. We also help to strengthen communities around the world. And part of how we do that is by supporting organizations like the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute that are really helping to transform lives and to, as I said, strengthen communities. And that is why we're so honored to be one of the founding partners of the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute. And really through our partnership with Chile, Ford has been able to facilitate numerous opportunities to empower young líderes like yourselves to achieve their dreams and contribute to their communities in meaningful ways. So it's exciting to see many of you here today, and I just want to tell you to take the opportunity to network, as Juan mentioned, because you really never know who the person you meet today how they can end up affecting your life. They can end up being your employer, because I started out as an intern just like you did. I'm not going to say how long ago that was, but I was an intern just like you. And then I ended up at the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute, and now I'm at Ford. So again, you never know who you're going to meet. So make sure that you network, you exchange business cards, and you keep in touch. So again, thank you for being here today, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, Yusef. And now I will have the pleasure of introducing not only my boss, but our mentor and our friend. When you find your first job, the more environment feel as best as it can be. Before I came to the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute, I worked 4 years in Capitol Hill. And the experience I got here brought me to where I am today, and I wouldn't tell you, it has been the best decision of my life. And we produce what our mentors and our bosses teach us to produce. And it starts from the upper head, the Chairman Lincoln, and then it comes to our President and CEO, who will speak to you right now. Please help me in welcome our friend and our boss and our mentor, Miriam Gomez.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you again, Giselle. So it's so awesome to see Giselle up here with Ford Motor Company for a couple of reasons. One, Ford's been a major sponsor and a contributor to this conference since the very beginning of this conference. So a special shout out to Ford, and I know all of you have your little backpack, string backpack. So we're doing our Twitter handles. Make sure you tweet about that and give Ford a special thank you for that. And Giselle in particular, I joined the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute after she left and went on to bigger and brighter things as well. So she left me lots of notes and things to follow. So I think I've done everything you've left me to do, Giselle. So I wanted to just do a couple of little housekeeping items as well. So you'll have your phone for sure. You can put that in silent. Be able to tweet about the activities here. On the screen, you'll see everyone's Twitter handle, so you can promote what we're doing. We're also live streaming and videotaping this, so that for some of your friends maybe who aren't here, maybe you tell them about somebody's great presentation, they can watch the video later on our YouTube channel, and they can get all the additional information for it. I already see one who's here. As they come in, we'll make sure that they provide their inspirational remarks as well. But I do want to do a little shout out to, I think I see a couple of our advisory council members and board members here. So Isaac, raise your hand, dear. Stand up as well so all the kids can see you. This is Isaac Reyes from Target. Thank you, Isaac, for being here from our advisory council. Maria Luisa Boyce with UPS. Please stand, sweetheart, so everybody can see you. And I think we had a couple of other people come in, and we'll introduce them as they get in. The foundation of Chile is that we prepare, connect, and honor leaders. We're about leadership. Today, it's about preparing all of you for excellence that you've already done and taking it to another level. Like Giselle said, this is an opportunity for you to meet other people. And it's not just about meeting other people, but it's connecting, right? You want to help them and they're going to want to help you. And this is an opportunity for you to be able to do that today. Some members of Congress here, I want to go ahead and get started with the next introduction here, who is going to give you some more texture on the organization's establishment. So a proper introduction so that all of you know about this great man that Juan referenced to earlier. So the Honorable Lincoln Diaz-Balart founded the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute in 2003. He was first elected to Congress in 1992 to the House of Representatives, representing Florida. He also worked on the Foreign Affairs Committee and a number of other different committees while he was there. A couple of points to clarify, to share with you that are really important that you reference about his career and also as you look at what you want to do in your career, is that he was the first Hispanic in history to serve in the very powerful House Rules Committee. So during the day, when all these members are they're going back and forth and they've got one legislation and they have something else going on, they still have to run it by a Rules Committee. So imagine his job when it's kind of started when everybody else is kind of finished. So that makes for a long day. And I know he was always missed by his family in those long days here in Washington. The other point of pride is he was the author of the Nicaraguan Adjustment and Central American Relief Act of 1997, which granted legal residency to hundreds and thousands of immigrants in Central America. We have been at many events, and I've been with the congressman at different events, where people come up to him and thank him for that. And so with that, please join me in a round of applause and a welcome for my boss, the Honorable Lincoln Diaz-Balart.
Bill Flores? Yes. Where is Bill? Bill, thank you. A pillar, introduce him in just a few minutes. Friends, welcome, each and every one of you. It's a privilege for us that you're here with us this morning, each and every one of you. You are leaders, not only future leaders, you're already leaders, and you have our admiration. The Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute is really the only bipartisan game in town. And I say that with pride and also with cognizance of the fact that, well, by saying it's the only bipartisan game in town, how unique that is. And the more tension and partisan tension that exists, the more unique it is that there's a bipartisan organization where we meet on a bipartisan basis and we respect each other on a bipartisan basis. That's unique. And so now, we're in an election year, the tension's going to grow even more in the next month. But in Chile, the respect remains. And listening to each other remains. There's so many things that are extraordinary about the United States. Respect for immigrants. We hear, obviously, the flaws. We've seen the news, the flaws, the mistakes, the pain that flaws cause. But no country in the world treats immigrants better. There's some, I've seen some cases, for example, the former Prime Minister recently of France was born in Spain, in Barcelona, in Catalonia. That's so unique. And Europe has made strides toward unity. They have a European Union. I came as an immigrant here at age 4. No one ever held that against me when I was making laws for the rest of the United States. For all Americans. And for all residents and all visitors of the United States. Nobody said, but your vote counts less because you're an immigrant. No. It's extraordinary. There have been secretaries of state, members of the cabinet, other members of the cabinet that have been immigrants. Keep in mind, as even you see the flaws and the pain that flaws and errors make and cause, because nothing human is perfect. No human endeavor is perfect. It may be perfectible, we can strive to make it better, but no human endeavor is perfect. That's an important matter to keep in mind. But as you see the news, remember that at its heart, this is a very fair, uniquely exclusive America. Giselle is here. She's part of the family, as she pointed out, of the Chile family. She worked for so long with us and was one of our great leaders, and will always be grateful. And she was talking about her company now. She has this extraordinary position, Ford. Now, Chile is pro-trade, and we're pro-human rights. And that is, as we, Marianne pointed out, prepare and help leaders of the future, we stand for trade, we support human rights, but fair trade. Fair trade. He said, was talking, and I was thinking, Fords face tariffs when they export their vehicles to countries around the world, much higher, incomparably higher, than what foreign automobile manufacturers face when they export their vehicles to the United States. That's not fair. It's an issue that's being discussed in our body politic. It's an important issue. An even playing field for American companies and American workers. It's an important issue that we need to think about. And I was thinking about it when you said, I was talking about her great company that we're grateful for, because Ford was a founder of Chile. And then I just want to leave you with another, before I have the great privilege of introducing my friend Bill Flores. The unique aspects of the United States. The Congress here, the Congress, is, how can I put it, uniquely sovereign. Now, what do I mean? There are other, obviously, great democracies in the world, many. I had the pleasure of living in Spain for many years, that had the privilege, through a lot of heroism and international solidarity, by the way, to transition from a long dictatorship to a democracy. But for example, there, in that democracy and in many other democracies of the world, when people vote on election days, they vote for the party. They know the party leaders, and basically that's who they vote for. That's who they know, that's who they relate to, that's who they identify. They identify the parties with the party leaders, and that's who they vote for. In the United States, uniquely, members of Congress elections are tough. They're hand-to-hand combat, which doesn't exist in any other country. Fortunately, it's with ballots, not bullets. Sometimes in our history, it's become the other way, but we've avoided it for generations, fortunately, many generations. But people know who they're voting for, and then that member of Congress, in that uniquely sovereign Congress, Parliament, becomes, if you will, the ombudsman for the residents of his or her district. When the residents of his or her district have a problem, they can go to their member of Congress, and if their member of Congress has done their job and has a good staff and is on top of his or her district, trying to solve the problems, that member of Congress can get reelected. If the member of Congress gets out of touch, loses touch with his or her district, the member of Congress will not have a long career in Congress. That uniqueness of what I call the sovereignty of this Congress is something that in my studies of the world, of other democracies, I always find not only unique but admirable. As any human endeavor, it has its pros and cons. You know, some of us might find shocking, or sometimes tactless, the hand-to-hand combat at the congressional district. But it's part of our system. And after that hand-to-hand combat, the people in that district know who won. They also know who lost for a few weeks. They may remember. But they know who won that election, and that person better be an effective ombudsman for that district. So I started off by saying we're the only bipartisan game in town. By the way, I just want to have, as a point of personal privilege, thank the first interview I had when I got elected to Congress was by someone who then and still today is a journalist of extraordinary prestige. And I remember that his interviews were tough but fair. Armando Guzman is here. He's going to host the first panel. It's such a privilege to have him here. And I mentioned we're the only bipartisan game in town. I'm going to introduce Bill Flores, who's an exceptional friend, but I'm informed that we also have Joyce Beatty here from Ohio. It's an honor to have her. Thank you. And you have a disciple who is now one of our leaders, Juan Negron, and through him I've learned of the exceptional person that you are. And so thank you for being here, and it's an honor to have you. Now, Bill Flores, who I call a pillar, never says no, not only never says no, is always present at Chile events with his life story, his wisdom, his inspirational stories, as Marianne pointed out. When she said, you'll hear inspirational stories, I say, well, not from me, but from others you will. And one who you will hear from, who is an inspiration, is my friend who I deeply admire, Congressman Bill Flores.
Well, howdy, everybody.
Howdy.
Good morning. It's great to see y'all. How many of you are from the north? Well, let me start with the best place. How many of you are from Texas? All right. So, well, welcome to D.C., sometimes known as the swamp. Anyway, how many of you are from the northeast? All right. Southeast, the southwest, northwest, somewhere else? Okay. Well, welcome to the Chile's Leadership Conference. I'm always humbled to be able to speak at these and to get a chance to meet some of you and to share some ideas regarding what I see on the future in terms of developing our nation's next generation of leaders. Chile has done an exceptional job with these conferences, I think, and also with their intern program of molding the next generation of young dynamic leaders that we're going to need in this country that think outside the box. And I think that this year's conference is aptly titled Connecting You with the Real World. Now, one of the things I find interesting when we have young people come in and go to work with us, not only as interns but also as members of Team Flores, is that sometimes they come in with views that really don't, that reflect that they don't really understand how the real world works. And so if you want to be successful and be a leader in the real world, you need to be able to connect to that real world early on. I would like to ask one question of you before I get into some of my remarks, if I could. This just helps give me an idea as to what people are thinking, particularly this group that has such diverse backgrounds, not only geographically, but also in terms of your family histories. So I'm going to ask you a question: is what do you think is the most important issue facing America today? I've got 6 answers, and then I'll add it. If you think it's something else, I'll give you a chance to do that. So let me run through them twice, and then I'll ask you to vote. So again, the question is, what do you think is the most important issue facing America today? Number 1 is jobs and the economy. Number 2 is federal spending and deficits. Number 3 is border security and immigration. Number 4 is national security, defense, and foreign policy. Number 5 is climate change. And number 6 is lack of civility. Okay, so let me run through them again. Then we're going to vote. 1 is jobs and the economy, federal spending and deficits, border security and immigration, national security, defense, foreign policy, climate change, lack of civility. So let me get you to vote. Vote once if you would. Some people like to vote twice, and I didn't have an all the above, so you got to vote for one. So how many of you think it's jobs in the economy? All right. How many federal spending and deficits? All right. Border security and immigration. Okay, got quite a few hands on that. National security, defense, and foreign policy. All right. Climate change. Okay. And lack of civility. That's become kind of my number one issue the last few weeks. How many of you think it's something else? Okay. Okay, so on all you think we covered everything. Well, let me talk about connecting with the real world for a few minutes, and I'll give you some thoughts to think about. Lincoln said I was going to share my life story. I'm not. Hey, Eliana. Good to see you again. So, she's a pillar of Chile. Anyway, so in terms of connecting with the real world, first of all, this is not connecting with the real world. This is one window into the real world, but this is not connecting with the real world. What I advise you to do in terms of connecting with the real world is put this down and sit across from the person that you want to connect with. Have that interpersonal, face-to-face, eye-to-eye relationship. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, and think about the way you use those resources when you're getting to know that person. If you want to connect with somebody, find out their story, put yourself in their shoes, learn how to be empathetic with them, and you'll be able to better connect with them. So that's my first piece of advice. The second piece of advice is you all want to be leaders in this country or in your organizations or in your community. In order to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower first. And what I've noticed in younger generations is sometimes, okay, I want to come into the organization, I'm willing to work a couple of weeks, but then I want to be senior vice president, I want to be in the corner office. Okay, that's not the way the real world works. So if you want to connect with the real world, if you want to really be able to lead in the real world, learn how to follow first. So understand that in order to be a good leader, you've got to know how to be led. And so make yourself available. Go up the extra mile. Do what other people won't do. Show that you could be led. Show that you could be a servant leader. And then you'll have followers as you move through your life and career. So again, learn how to do that. The other thing I'd give you, and this is not so much connecting with the real world, but this is what I would call just career advice. Remember, a lot of people think this is connecting with the real world, but the challenge with this is everything you do on here is permanent. It's always out there for everybody to see. It's almost impossible to clean up your history that you create with this device. So before you hit send, enter, whatever the go button is, think twice about the picture, the tweet, the comment. Remember, people are going to look at this and say, is this person a civil person? Is this person an uncivil person? What does this person say about their value set by the things that they put on here? If you use this to connect with the world, make sure you realize that some of those connections can never be undone. So that's just my piece of advice on that. So that, I want to keep it short and sweet. So really just 3 things for you. Remember, connect personally instead of with this. If you do connect with this, be very careful how you do it. Learn how to be a good follower in order to be a great leader. Another thing you might think about, one of the problems I notice with people today in leadership positions, particularly here in Washington, D.C., is I work with more narcissists per capita than anywhere in the world. And so what is it? What is narcissism? What's sort of the seed for narcissism? The seed is excess pride. So always watch your pride. Remember, no matter whether you're the person taking out the trash, or you're the CEO, or the president, or whatever, you put your pants on the same way every day, or your skirt. Okay, you put it on the same way as everybody else. Always remember that. Because if you don't, if you become prideful, if you think that you're better than somebody else, that leads to arrogance, which leads to narcissism, and narcissism is essentially incurable. I've just seen people that look in the mirror and they see somebody totally different from what the other 99.9% of the world sees. So that's my advice for y'all today. My website is flores.house.gov, so be sure and follow us, and you can follow us on all the social media if you would, although it's kind of a food fight out there right now. So be careful what you see. You might want to look at it behind closed doors. Anyway, so take a look at those things. I want to remind all of you, we have some interesting times in this country, but be sure to pray for our country. Pray for the military men and women that allow us to meet in a place like this with the liberty and freedom that Lincoln talked about and the peace that we have. And remember the local first responders that help keep us safe here at home. Keep them in your prayers as well. It's my honor to introduce Joyce Betty, representative from Ohio District 3. So Joyce,
for a photo.
oh, sure.
So, because I know you all need to get back to your regular job, so I'm going to ask Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, just as she puts something in her mouth, to please come up here, sweetheart. If I can get a photo with all of you first, because then you're going to go and Chairman Giselle, right in front of that banner, Isaac, Maria Luisa, I think
Right here in the banner.
right over here. Otherwise, let me get you back to your job.
Okay.
All right. Natalie? Natalie. Luisa, Isaac. I think that's my home, right?
Here, we're starting over
We're
here.
starting over there and left and working our way to the right. Okay.
Okay, right here.
Right.
And right here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right here.
No, go ahead. Letting everybody else do the other.
Good. Okay, thank everybody right here. And one more. Thank you.
Yeah. Go Joyce. Joyce. Thank you.
Watch that stuff.
Let me just say what an honor it is for me to be here with so many of my colleagues. Let me just say that you're going to get a lot of information today. But before I bring my very brief remarks, I want to make sure, Marianne, that I say to you, thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your work. Thank you for bringing the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute and all these young people. So you're going to hear a lot today. You're going to have great panels. You're going to have a lot of members of Congress tell you a lot of things. But I bring diversity to you today. So when you talk about your diversity, it's really important for you to embrace it. So I'm going to give you sound bites. When you're on a program like this, the whole book is too much, and I know you've been sitting here, so I want you to leave here. And it's just like when you graduated from high school or college, and somebody always said, who was your commencement speaker? And you start thinking, I don't even remember. Well, that might be okay, but you're in the halls of Congress. So when you leave here, I want you to remember that lady that was loud, she had gray hair, but her name was Congresswoman Joyce Bailey. Okay? I want you to remember that. So I'm going to say it at least 3 times, because that's what I want you to do. Whether you're going in for the job market, whether you're in graduate school, whether you're in a leaders program, I want you to remember 3 C's. I want you to remember to always have confidence. I want you to own it. I want you to have courage, which means you believe in yourself. You believe in your culture and your history, and you express it. And then I want you to understand the value of civility and collaboration. That is so important. If you don't respect yourself and respect someone else, then you have failed yourself. Now, let me just tell you that I believe in young folks, and I believe in practicing what I preach. I believe in diversity. I have one of the most diverse, probably, offices in the United States Congress. But today is your day. And I would certainly be remiss if I didn't tell you, as a baby boomer, I've learned a lot from millennials. I let them put me all over social media to Drake's I'm in the building. Because if you didn't see it, I want you to YouTube and see those good moves that I had. And it was all about registering young folks to vote. If you want that corner office that he just talked about, if you want, you're going to hear on this panel about being future leaders, you cannot own your power without using your voice and your vote. I had a young man that walked into my office and I interviewed him and I thought he was good. I didn't think he was great, but I thought he was really good. So we continued to interview people. He called me at least 15 times asking me where was he on the interview list. So I decided someone that had that much confidence and that much courage to call me directly, I should probably give him a second chance. Message to self: don't give up on the first ask. Don't give up. Courage and confidence. So he called me back and he said, you know, I was thinking I should come in for a second interview. Congresswoman Joyce Bailey. So I said, let's bring this young man back in. Months had gone by. He walked in, he was poised, he knew more about myself than I knew about self. So I said, self, I like this young man. And so I said to him, I'm going to have you come back one more time in a couple days, and I'm going to ask you to do some things. And he came back even more prepared. And I want you to know that young man is Juan Negron Diaz. And let me just tell you, now, he had linen paper, now he's got shiny glossy paper, 200 weight versus the 80 weight congressional cards. He is now Director of Programs in Internal Affairs. And I just want you to know, when you believe in someone and they work hard, you move up to that corner office. And there's nothing wrong with wanting success. There's nothing wrong with wanting a big salary. There's nothing wrong with working hard. But let me leave you with this. When you get that corner office and you're bragging about it, it's not worth the corner office if you're not bringing somebody else along. When you brag that you're the first Hispanic, and there's no second or third, then you have failed. You have an obligation to your culture, to your ethnicity, to make sure that you respect it by respecting others and bringing them along. So if you just remember those few things, you are our future leaders. And I'm just so honored to say the two most powerful words I can say. And that's thank you for being our leaders. Thank you for being part of my future. And again, just so you remember, I am Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, and I approve this message. Thank you.
Joyce, you were amazing. You are amazing. And Juan had talked to us about you, but you are a star, and what a privilege for the United States of America that you're in Congress. And Congresswoman Beatty talked about, make sure that there's someone who follows you. Remember that Marianne said I was the first Hispanic who was on the Rules Committee? And by the way, that's a big chore, because they meet... I know. That's where I'm going. That's where I'm going. It's a committee that meets at night. So when members of Congress, they finish, and they've had a long day, somebody's got to prepare the agenda for the next day, or for the next few days. Yes, I was the first Hispanic. Ileana, who happens to be the first Hispanic woman ever elected to Congress, who then was the chairwoman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the United States Congress. In addition to that, they said, would you like to be on the Rules Committee? Oh, as though I had time. She said, as though she had time. She said yes. So she was the second Hispanic on the Rules Committee. She's my sister. I have learned so much from her. I continue to. The sweetest, nicest, and yet toughest leader on behalf of principle, of human rights, of human decency. I've seen her speak truth to power in rooms, in small rooms and in large, where I was simply amazed at her strength of character, and yet she always has a nice word for everyone. And watch out if you ask her for a favor, because she'll move mountains to try to get a problem for that constituent solved. It is my privilege, it is Chile's privilege that she was our founder, but it is for all Latinos, and really for all Americans. It's been an honor and a privilege that she has served and continues to serve this nation.
Mario, Jose, Rafa, their spouses, their kids. I mean, I love them all. But Lincoln was my first love, so always be faithful to your first love. Felicidades to all of our young leaders. I'm going to be briefer than the other speakers because those bells tell you that we are voting. And I will agree with what Joyce was talking about, courage and civility and conviction and confidence. And I'm so glad that she ended her comments about being helpful to others who come after you and being proud of your ethnicity. And I think that's one of the glorious things about this monster of an institution that Lincoln founded, that Mary Ann is just an amazing director. Give it up for Mary Ann. She is amazing. And they do these great seminars to boost young people up. And that's one of the best things about Chile is their internship program, their fellowship program, seminars like this. There's no topic that Chile will not put on a briefing for, whether it's trade or investment, but the overarching theme is always to be proud of where you come from, be proud of your ethnicity, be proud of your language, of your roots, but be inclusive as well. You know, everybody's got their own personal story, and you never know what's happening in that person's life. So kindness is such a good thing. What Joyce was saying about civility, everything has gotten so partisan up here. But I have faith in the future. I have faith in each and every one of you. You are going to change the conversation and the tone in our society. Because young people say, geez, enough of that. Let's come together and pass some common sense legislation. Let's see how we can work together and bridge the divide. Nuestro apóstol, José Martí, dijo que los niños son la esperanza del mundo. The children are the hope of the world. Our great independence leader in Cuba, José Martí, said that. Wise words. And I believe in the future. I believe in young people. I believe in you. This generation is really going to make its mark on our society. We messed it up a lot. You're going to clean it up and you're going to improve it. Solamente le quiero decir felicidades. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you, Lincoln. Thank you, Mary Ann. Guzman, what an honor to see you again, Armando Guzman. But I know you've got a panel and I've got a vote, and I don't know who I'm supposed to introduce. So one. Let me see that. Let me see that business card that Joyce was talking about. Oh, she's not kidding. It is really heavy stuff. Come on over here. Ladies and gentlemen, Juan Negron Diaz, Director, she was right, of Programs and External Affairs. Be pushy, be aggressive, be assertive. Not pushy and aggressive. Be assertive and be confident. Muchísimas gracias, amigo. Felicidades. I gotta go.
One more round of applause for Congresswoman Eliana Rossetti. One of the things that you will learn while you work in Congress is as much as you plan and you want to be on time, you will never be on time. So we're going to get back on board. And now it is my pleasure to introduce to you our amazing moderator and MC, Mr. Armando Guzman. And before I introduce him, I would also like to thank one of our amazing board members, Natalie Reyes, who was the one who made this possible to have Armando here today. So, Natalie, thank you. Mr. Armando Guzman. He's a renowned journalist both in Mexico and the United States. He has covered the White House, Congress for 2 decades and is one of the most recognized journalistic members in the Hispanic and American community. Armando was a national correspondent for Univision from 1983 to 2001 and also hosted and produced Temas y Debates at the network for 10 years. Guzman has won numerous awards and recognitions for his work and has traveled to more than 70 countries in the lookout for news and information. Currently, Armando continues his duties as Washington Bureau Chief for TV Azteca from Mexico and Azteca America. Please join me and welcome Armando Guzman.
Thank you very much, Juan. Thank you. Welcome. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. It's always a distinction to be part of this family of the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute. People that do lots of work, and they have been doing good for many years.
I'm coming up next
Absolutely.
week because I got to cut in.
Oh, please do.
So we've just been joined by one of our vice chairmen, Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, as Juan mentioned, they have votes, a lot of things going on, so we're cutting in so that the congressman can give us his inspirational remarks.
Well, I think, I apologize that I was on the way here and they called votes. So good to see all of you, the board members, dear friends. I'm interrupting one of the people that I have known for many, many years. He's the consummate professional, respected throughout the country and throughout the world for his professionalism, for his integrity. So I'm not going to interrupt him other than to say thank you for doing this. Public service, I think, is not only something that inspires me every day. I feel blessed to be to have the opportunity to work on issues and to fight for issues that are important. And so just know that the fact that I have to run is not because I don't want to stay here. It's because, again, they have called votes. But you're going to listen to somebody now who I wish I could say to listen, because he's, again, one of the, in his field, one of the most respected individuals that you'll have the opportunity to meet. Take advantage of him, all right? Spend some time with him, learn from him. Thank you, and I apologize that I have to run. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you very much. Very well.
I just want to say hello.
What a treat. Ladies and gentlemen, young guys, young gals, welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. This event has a core mission of increasing awareness about the importance of preparing the coming generation, you, for the challenges of being a leader in the public and in private sector. And if you believe these challenges are complicated now, well, just wait a bit. And just look behind and look back, and you'll see how easy things were and how complicated are becoming. And that is natural. We're more people. Every day is becoming more complex, more global, and a heck of a lot more challenging. So we always have to be one step ahead. We will talk about what steps you can take to have a brand for yourself and how to use that brand in order to advance yourself. But first, we're going to listen to our keynote speaker, Evelia Rodriguez Montoya. She is the president and CEO of Rodriguez and Media Communication, a firm established to assist clients looking to expand their brand, product, mission, or service in the Latino market and beyond. Evelia has over 15 years of experience in communications and public affairs work for the public and private sectors. Recently as Deputy Press Secretary for Mayor Rahm Emanuel. She has managed press for the Chicago Department of Transportation, the Chicago Fire Department, and the Chicago Department of Aviation, as well as corporate and private sector work in New York City and Chicago. That is not easy, ladies and gentlemen. This work requires a lot of talent, and our keynote speaker has that talent today, and she's going to share that with you. Evelia was recently featured in Google Thrive magazine, focusing on highlighting women entrepreneurs. And she has done an amazing job on bringing everybody, all of us, along with her, because she was also named Negocios Now Latinos 40 Under 40, receiving the 2017 Business Leadership Award for the Hispanic Women's Corporation in Phoenix, and received also the 2018 Folio Top Women in Media Up and Comer Award. Eve Works has been featured on CNBC, NBC Latino, ABC7, Univision, the Chicago Tribune, and on Google, My Business Campaign. Currently, Evelia serves at the Board of Trustees of the National Museum of Mexican Art, is a board director of the Little Village Chamber of Commerce. Where do you have time? Where do you find time for all that? We're all happy and excited that she is with us this morning. Please help me welcome our keynote speaker, Evelia Rodriguez.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Very excited to be here. I was able to listen to some of our congressional leaders talk to us about some very valuable points. I saw that a lot of you were taking notes, so I'm glad to see that, and I hope to extend on some of that learning this morning. Again, my name is Eve Rodriguez Montoya. I'm the president and CEO of Rodriguez Media Communications, and it is truly an honor to be here this morning as your keynote speaker. Now, I want to go ahead and get started. For this keynote, I decided to go with 3 very important points that have helped me throughout my entire career, both in the private and public sector. Number 1, embrace your culture. Number 2, the power of yes. And number 3, inspire leadership. Now, going to embrace your culture, I want to start with my family. So I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, in a community called Little Village. Little Village is La Villita, which is Mexico in Chicago. My parents immigrated from Mexico. They met in Chicago, but they made their way to Chicago from Guadalajara and from Durango. So they worked in several businesses, met each other, they got married, they had my 3 brothers and I, and then they decided to leap into entrepreneurship, mainly because something called NAFTA passed. Can someone in this room tell me what NAFTA stands for? Back there in the blue? That's correct. The North American Free Trade Agreement was passed in 1994, and that allowed trade. We talked a little bit about trade today. So free trade between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. So this opened up an opportunity for my family to import products to Chicago, which had a growing Latino population, mainly from Mexico. So my dad decided that it was an opportunity to bring something into the city that people were craving for, which was products from Mexico. So he created Dulcelandia. Dulcelandia Candy Store brand imports candy and piñatas from Mexico, and we have several locations in Chicago neighborhoods, mainly Latino neighborhoods, importing products that my dad says people were nostalgic for. So this allowed my brothers and I to work in a family business environment, which is very hard. Learning to work with each other and also build a brand that my dad had, thought of and created. So we ended up doing so, and it gave us an opportunity to also, study and go into different fields that were of interest to us. For me, I decided to go into government work. I studied communications in undergraduate degree, and I got an undergraduate degree in communications, and I received a master's in public policy from Northwestern University. Now, I had the opportunity to work under 2 mayoral administrations. First, Mayor Daley for 10 years, which are the departments Armando talked about, and then most recently as Deputy Press Secretary for Mayor Emanuel. Now, in those positions, I realized, going back to embracing my culture, how important it was for me to do so, because I understood working in the family business how important my culture was, how we were growing as a community, and we always tried to empower our members of the community by hiring from those communities to work in our candy stores. And so when I got to city government, I thought I was mainly, the majority of the time, the only Latina in the room. And I was representing a city government, whether a department or working with a commissioner. And it was very important for me to think about our community that was growing, and also knowing that embracing my culture, and because I was bilingual, having an opportunity to communicate what the city was trying to do at a municipal level to a growing Spanish-speaking community. So I made it a point to reach out to Latino media like Univision and Telemundo and Hoy, and make the mayor available to speak to those networks because we had a very important sector of the population in Chicago. So I always found a way to embrace my culture through that. Now, after 15 years of career in the public sector and communications, the family business was always like with me, and they were not hesitant to reach out when they needed me to help. So I thought a great opportunity for me to kind of go into the family business, back into the family business, and kind of think of ways to become innovative and bring something new. So with that, I also found that a lot of the neighborhoods our candy stores resided in didn't really have healthy options. Candy's great, it's a great treat, but all in moderation. So I decided that I wanted to create a line of a healthy product that could be coupled with the candy. So I created a line of frozen yogurt with a Mexican twist, and I called it Yogolandia. So Yogolandia basically are frozen yogurt flavors, which are, a healthy base. You have a low-calorie product with high protein, high probiotics, but I made it Latino. I made it in flavors that I enjoyed and that I grew up with, like flan, horchata, pepino, and I thought it'd be a great kind of way to complement the candy and push that product forward, is using the candy as toppings. So I did some branding work to get the name out there. I talked a lot about how I created the brand because nothing like it existed. So I really did Google everything. I know that's what they say, you Google everything. I Googled everything about creating a line of frozen yogurt. Now with that, there was so much success with it. It was featured with so many media outlets, and I thought it did really well. Why can't I do this for other clients looking to engage with the Latino community? And this is the time to do that. We're so strong in numbers. You guys are all an example of that. You're here, representing the country. You come from all these different cities with growing Latino population. So I thought, let me go back into what I first started, which is communications, for the public sector. But, take that leap into entrepreneurship like my parents did when they came from Mexico, and carry that into a second generation, and being, making sure that we're powerful, we're out there speaking on behalf of our community. And why this is important, it's because that's where the numbers are. In Chicago, Latinos are now 30% of the city's population. We're the second largest ethnic group. In the U.S., we're 58 million, which is about 20% of the entire nation's population, making us the largest ethnic group. And most importantly, as consumers,
We control 1.3 trillion in buying power. 1.3 trillion in buying power. And that's expected to go up to 1.7 trillion by 2020. So these numbers are very impactful. This is why it's time for us to engage with the growing Latino community. And this is the time why it's important for you, all of you, to embrace your culture, because we need your voice. In the last 6 months, I've had the pleasure of working as a communications director for a first-time statewide campaign in Illinois for Attorney General. I'm also a publicist for a Latina couture designer in Chicago, and after working with her on her brand and her publicity and featuring her on ABC and Univision and other media, she's now going to open her first shop on Oak Street, which is the Rodeo Drive of Chicago. And that's impactful because I can say she's going to be the first Latina couture designer, fashion designer, to open a shop there. So she'll be next to Escala to give you a little perspective. Now, also another point that I think is important is to collaborate with individuals. In Chicago, I'm seeing that I'm getting, there's a lot of opportunity for me to collaborate with top public affairs firms looking to engage with the Latino community, because they're seeing what's out there, they're reading about it, and they think it's absolutely important. We're a growing multicultural community, so collaborating with them has been really key for me in Chicago. Now, all of these opportunities, I strongly feel, embrace my culture. Now, the next point I want to talk about, which is one of my favorite, it's called the power of yes. It's very important to say yes to opportunities. I feel sometimes that, us as Latinos, we tend to be, a little shy when it comes to taking on that, challenge and opportunity. And, we're humble, right? We're humble. We maybe don't want to ruffle any feathers. We've come from immigrant families or first generation, and so it's sometimes a challenge. But I really, really request of you to understand the power of yes and saying yes to opportunities. I said yes to being the only Latina in the room. I said yes to entrepreneurship, and I said yes to speaking up every chance that I got. And since then, as Armando mentioned, I've been able to be awarded several awards since I left city government and became an entrepreneur. But most recently, I think the one I'm most proud of is just this month, I was actually just last week, I was here in DC participating elected officials to form part of the inaugural HOPE National Fellowship Program. HOPE stands for Hispanas Organized for Political Equity or Equality. And it's an important group because our goal is really to deal with gender parity and equality on a global scale. And I want to make mention of Natalie Reyes, who's here today, because of Natalie, who's the chair of HOPE. And she came out to Chicago and told me how wonderful this group was and what they were doing, and asked me to be part of the inaugural class. So I owe that to her, and she's the reason I'm here as well as your keynote. So thank you, Natalie. Now, I'm going to delve into the power of yes a little bit more, because for me, Google has given me so many opportunities. Google came out to Chicago. They hosted a roundtable. And since I'm a member of the Little Village Chamber of Commerce, they asked me to come to the roundtable and speak about how small businesses owned by Latinos are using Google tools to expand their presence online. So I said, perfect, of course we use Google tools at Dulcelandia, the Share Drive and Google Docs and things like that to get our information from store to store. But I also use Google to create an entire brand because, working in the mayor's office and working in communications, even though I had the family business always with me in my life, I really didn't know anything about a frozen yogurt shop. But I knew that it would do well. So I Googled everything. I found all this valuable information. And so I featured in the Google Thrive magazine as a woman entrepreneur. Google has also signed me up as a Google diversity supplier. So what that means is they buy our candy and piñatas for any of their events nationally. And they're also looking to carry my churro flavor frozen yogurt in the Google commissaries nationally. So talk about Latino immersion, right, and embracing your culture. Now, the part of the opportunities with Google that I am most excited about is having been selected as the Google My Business featured business for their campaign. So I'd like to now share a video with you. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, in Little Village. Little Village is what Mexico in Chicago looks like, and it's a representation of our culture. My dad came to this country at 13 years old. He came to work in the fields in California. He eventually started importing candy and piñatas from Mexico, and that's how the Dulcelandia candy store was created.
If you're willing to work hard and put up the time that it takes to get things done, there are opportunities everywhere. The important thing is to provide for my children and my grandchildren.
My dad is a true example of a successful immigrant business owner that set the bar pretty high for my brothers and I. During the economic downturn, we started consolidating some of our stores. It was heart-wrenching to think that we would have to disappear as a small business. After 15 years of career in communications, I felt that I could add something to the business. My dad had been flavored frozen yogurt like horchata, churro, mango, and even better, topped with Mexican candy. The first person I reached out to was my brother, and he says, yes, this is great, but how are you going to get the word out? How are people going to know that Yogolandia exists? Listing Yogolandia on Google was absolutely key for us. It truly legitimizes you as a business. It's free, and it really put us on the map. So that's really exciting for us to see that people are finding out about Yogolandia. There's photos, and we've gotten phenomenal reviews.
It's a great opportunity for us to take advantage of all of these tools to help small businesses grow.
It's important to bring the business into the 21st century. It's the only way people are going to know what my dad created 23 years ago. Isn't that fantastic?
Oh, yeah.
Look outside your window. Are there businesses within a 100-mile radius of you that you would like to do business with? Then today's episode of Grow Live.
This is my keynote. Okay, so yes, that was just a fantastic opportunity for our family business to get our brand out there. So, thank you for watching. Now, the last point that I'd like to share is inspire, and the most important is inspire leadership. So everyone is a leader in his or her own way. I actually just picked that up from the Hope Fellowship. And I couldn't agree more. Each and every one of you is a leader. You're already a leader. You're at the Future Leaders Conference at the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute. That is impactful. So make sure to carry on that thought with you, after you leave today, and the decisions you make tomorrow and the next day and the next day. But remember, we all have strengths and weaknesses. We cannot possibly know everything. Now, I throw that in there about the millennials because I actually, have one in my family, my younger brother, Marco, who's 23, and he helped me, as you saw in the video, with the Yogolandia brand. But so I just threw that in there. But, just capitalize on your strengths. Make sure to surround yourself with those that can help you with your weaknesses, so you can really elevate yourself, and then working with someone, you're going to elevate them as well. And learn the word collaborate. Collaborating is not a weakness. It's actually a very important strength in your entire career path. Make sure to collaborate. And remember to be nice. People remember nice. So always be nice. No one, they forget mean. So be nice on your way up the ladder, because there's going to be times where you might run into that person on your way up. at a different level, and so you want to be able to smile and say, hey, I remember you from, you know, this conference we were at, and, you know, you needed coffee, and I shared, you know, some that I had because there wasn't any. Something like that. Just always be nice. Now, you can do this. Everyone in this room, I believe in you because I was you. I would attend conferences. I would, you know, join groups. I was very active in high school and in college and even in undergrad. So, you can do this. This is your time. Embrace your culture. Say yes. Inspire others. And just know that together we can definitely accomplish more. Even the impossible. I mean, look at that word. Impossible. So enjoy the rest of your conference. I think you guys are going to be spectacular in everything you decide to do. I want to personally thank Marianne for this opportunity to keynote. And your founder, Lincoln, Natalie as well, the chair, and Juan Negron for all of your work. Now, I can't sit here and talk about candy the entire time and not have some for you. So my colleague will be handing these out for every one of you. We actually stayed up really late the night before our flight to make 150. So make sure to take one with you. That we'll pass them out, and you can have some sugar to get you through the rest of this conference. Natalie, I thanked you. You missed it. I do have time for some questions. One or two questions.
We have microphones on the side.
Maybe the candy will. Yes.
Yeah. So, what is your business like? Are you a consultant for other small businesses in Chicago and help brand them? Is that what the organization does?
Correct. That's what Rodriguez Media Communications does. So basically, what I like to say is that I elevate your brand, product, mission, and service in the Latino market. So that is basically my elevator pitch. So I have a website where I have some examples of some of the work that I've done. The one thing that was a confidence booster for me was having been working in the public sector for 10 years, going into the private sector. I thought, an opportunity to kind of try out, what I was hoping to offer other clients was with the family business. Because, my dad would always support what I was doing, and it went so well that I said, there's a market for this. I can help other clients kind of, reach those goals to engage with such a growing sector. Yes.
Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
So inspiring. You talk about humble and being humble, or Latinos known for being humble, particularly Latinas. It's a little bit further. Any tips on how to sort of break that ceiling and not feel like you're arrogant, but actually being able to tell yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Great question. Yeah, because we're okay. Absolutely. So her question was, how do we break away from always being humble? Being humble in the room, maybe not raising your hand and speaking out. So basically, raise your hand and speak out. Because you grew up thinking you want to make sure to give you an example, I grew up in a very strict household. My dad is from Durango, so Durango is my dad was very strict, and he thought you're not supposed to leave your house until you get married, that kind of strictness. So I just thought, well, there's ways around this, because my first job out of college happened to be in New York. I was working at NBC as a page. In the Page program, before it became glamorous, and there's a 30 Rock show, and Kenneth the Page was running around in his polyester outfit. That was me. That was me right out of undergrad, and I was 21 years old, and my dad did not allow me to go away to college. He said, you have to stay local, so I received my undergraduate degree in communications in Chicago, which is not bad. I mean, we're the third largest city in market for communications. And as soon as I got my first job, it was in New York City. So I packed my bags. He couldn't say no. But that's even speaking out on that, the fact that, standing up to your parents, being like, I'm working hard for this opportunity. And then that just kept on going, like, you know, sitting at the table at NBC when we were, you know, going through some ideas for different, you know, I was working actually on Saturday Night Live as a page. And I was always like, I need to make sure I'm the only Latina here. I need to say something. I need to raise my hand. No question is a dumb question or no suggestion. So I always found a way to just participate, be part of the conversation. So then that, you know, went into city government, same thing. You know, I'm doing press for the Chicago Department of Transportation, talking about, you know, potholes, and that's not, you know, so fun and glamorous, but I'm like, okay, we're going to get some media on this. You know, we're making changes to neighborhoods in Chicago. So just finding a way to say, hey, you know, this is a neighborhood that has a lot of Latino residents. Why don't we have Univision come out and film this? So those are the types of opportunities I jumped at. One last question, I think.
Do you ever see yourself working for press here on the Hill?
Yes, I'm a consultant. I will, absolutely. I'll take any opportunity. I think in my career I've been, you know, very lucky to have both private sector and public sector experience. So I managed press for 15 years at a municipal level for city government. So absolutely, on a national level, I would love that. Thank you for that question.
Can I ask one last question?
Yes.
Thank you. How do you find meaning in what you do, and in moments of doubt, how have you continued to inspire people and, you know, be strong as a Latina?
Sure. So meaning for me is really, you know, embracing, they're voting, aren't they? Embracing my culture is super important. Like, that's meaningful to me. You know, being able to represent who I am, who I grew up. I grew up speaking Spanish first. I actually spoke Spanish before I spoke English, and I was born in Chicago, but I was raised by my grandmother and faced when they first came to the city of Chicago, not knowing the language, not knowing the culture, and just starting a business, you know, and learning the process of importing products from Mexico, and being able to start a brand. I thought, you know, there's so much meaning in that. You know, they embrace their culture. Let me take it to the next level, and then help others embrace our culture as well. Now, what was the second part?
So, when in moments of doubt, how do you surpass that?
Well, I just keep going. There are some challenges out there where some
on the next, but I also wanted to add a couple of things based on her presentation and what some of our other elected members said to the points about the confidence and making sure that you feel comfortable raising your hand. So there are going to be times that you definitely are going to be down. We've all had that. So my advice always to students is don't let that go. So if you're having a bad day, if you had a bad conversation, it didn't go the way you thought it was going to go, you saw something on the news that troubled you, whatever that is, take it in, own it, give it its time to go through you emotionally, physically, spiritually, and then move on. Because whether it's a good moment or a bad moment, whatever it might be, it starts to add up to your experiences. It starts to build who you are. It starts to build how you respond to other people. It starts to build to how you relate and collaborate with other people. So don't just dismiss a certain remark, or whether it's positive or negative. Obviously, we want to make sure that if it's a good thing, we kind of enjoy it for as long as we can, right? But there are times when times can kind of get sad, or you feel kind of lonely. And that's the other part of why it's so important to make connections and build the friendships, right? So I have a lot of family in Chicago. I just met Eve last week. Guess what? When I go to Chicago next time, you bet I'm taking Eve out with my tia Cele and my prima Miriam. And Natalie connected a bunch of women together who had never met each other at all from across the country. You all have an opportunity today to meet other people. So I'm hoping that by the end of today, you have an opportunity to introduce yourself to a stranger, because guess what? Everybody else is thinking the same thing you are. Nobody else wants to raise their hand. So the fact that you're here is a moment of pride, of dignity, of embracing your culture. And if you've never been to a leadership conference before, you're going to start adding this conference to your resume, and and you're going to start going to even more conferences. And just like I told a student who I saw at another event, next time I see you, I want your business card. Nobody in this town is passing out resumes. They're passing out business cards. So make sure that if you don't have one today, I don't care if you're in college, if you're in high school, you're unemployed, you've got a job, get a business card. So the next time I see you, you better give me your business card. Okay? So now I'm going to pass it on to Juan.
Let's give a round of applause again to EU, who's been my amazing friend for the past week. And now I would like to bring Armando back again, and we're going to start with the first panel. And let me tell you, this next panel is amazing. One of the things that I enjoy the most about my job is talking with our board members and speaking with all their colleagues and seeing the great things that we're doing today. So Armando, as our moderator, please come up again so that you can introduce our amazing panelists, and from here we'll take it on. Thank you.
Thank you again. We're going to have the opportunity of listening to people with experience. And I just have to add myself to your club of admirations, and really very inspirational, very educative. And I think that these young people will take a lot of use of all this advice that you gave us today. We're going to talk about how to brand yourself and how to have tools that will help you advance in your career. For this, we're going to be joined by a group of people that is going to be coming to our desk. And first, I want to introduce Natalie Reyes, Vice President of Public Affairs of Grupo Salinas. Yes, please give you a helping welcome her. Maria Luisa Boyce, Director of Global Affairs, UPS. Maria Luisa. Sean Luckenfeld, Communications Director, American Network Community of Options and Resources. There she is. Gabi Perla, member of the Public Policy and International Policy Team, Google. There we go. There she is. And Dominic Meneke, Communications Director, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty. There it is. Thank you very much. Welcome. Thank you for helping us with this task of inspiring and educating and giving tips to the young people that are attending this conference. How do you like? It's not necessarily that. Many people talk behind your back because they admire you. What is really serious is when people do not talk about you at all. And when people wonder who you are, what is that you do, what is that you're capable of doing, that is very important. And that is why we're asking our panel to give us an idea. Just think of a brand, any brand, and think of what is connected to. Think of Ferrari. What's Ferrari? Well, speed. Coca-Cola, refreshing. Walmart, economy. Well, the same thing that happens with these companies, and these companies emphasize that quality and that characteristic that they have. The same thing happened to us. We all have a brand. We want to brand ourselves as somebody. The thing is that you, as those companies did, have the opportunity of making that brand, making yourself unique, making yourself more marketable, more subjects of admiration, and making people talking about you in front of you and behind your back, but talking well. So, what are the top values and operating principles for something like that? How would you, I'm going to start with somebody who manages press and communications every day. Dominique, how do you create that brand? How do you help yourself create your persona that is going to be more sellable, more special, more unique?
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Marianne and Juan, for having me. Quickly, let me just go over myself. I'm Dominic Mankey, Communications Director with Congresswoman Joyce Beatty out of Ohio's 3rd Congressional District. So for me, my personal brand is I like to, well, first off, I'm going to tell you all that I'm going to keep it real with everyone in the office and the audience today. So we start with, for me, is my brand is built on my reputation. Where did I start getting my reputation? First, it started with being honest, being having good sound judgment, and then most importantly for me is, let's be real, is all of you are extremely talented in here, right? We're here at a leadership forum. For me, we have to break out of the mold, and this is really important for me, is we have to break out of the mold of realizing that we're all extremely smart people. And so every advantage that you can get, you have to take advantage of that advantage, right? And for me, that is what can start a conversation with someone. And for me, it's my crazy socks. So the little hot dogs for everyone to see. So I tell people when I do panels with young people all the time, right? It's an instant conversation starter. People always remember my crazy socks. And so for me, that's literally a huge advantage that I take advantage of. And then again, I'm going to go back to just very quickly, it's my judgment and being honest. Always willing to step up and tell people whether they like it or not. And of course, I'm going to find a way to put a PR spin on it, not be so aggressive sometimes, but letting people know that I have an opinion and share that opinion with those people.
That's a great advice. Sean, I was really curious and I had a lot of questions for you when I saw that Anchor is American Network Community and Options and Resources. What is all that? That sounds very powerful, very unique, very multi-themed.
So we are a great organization. Lesson number 1, people should understand what your brand does by its name, and its name should communicate that, and I feel like ours doesn't do a great job of that. But that's okay. So the American Network of Community Options and Resources, or ANCHOR, is a nonprofit trade association with about 1,400 members who provide services and supports to folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And so that is everything from training people with disabilities how to have a job, to providing in-home supports and services, with everything ranging from helping folks with their hygiene to taking them out into the community and making sure that they can be an included part of their community. And so this idea of community options and resources is really sort of nomenclature that grew out of the rhetoric of about 20 years ago, where we really started to see as a society that people, regardless of their level of ability, should have options for participating in their community. We shouldn't necessarily relegate folks with disabilities to institutions. And we should also recognize that we are all doing better and that we all have a stake in ensuring that folks with disabilities have the opportunity to be included in the community. So, not the strongest brand from my perspective in terms of our name. It is definitely a name that was devised at a different time in history, but we are doing really important work to support our members, and we really believe that folks with disabilities should have the same opportunities as the rest of us.
Thank you. Natalie Reyes is Vice President of Public Relations, Public Affairs for the Salinas Group. This is an enormous group comprised of telecommunications, banking, many other businesses. How do you do in order to, when you talk about communications and you brand the Salinas Group in communications, going there, or when you're doing it with retail, doing that, or banking, or some of the other parts of the business?
Well, it's being prepared, right? I think that understanding every business is important when you're explaining it to others. So I always push myself to learn the issues inside and out, from television to banking to retail, and trying to be the most prepared when I walk into a room. And obviously, you know, I carry the brand of Grupo Salinas, a large conglomerate, a Mexican conglomerate, providing excellence and excellent products from television to banking to telecommunications. And so it's an overarching theme of excellence and focusing on you know, the base of the pyramid, as we like to call it, and making sure that we're catering to that base. So there's an overarching theme, and obviously every component from TV to banking has its own marketing mechanisms.
Very interesting. When I was researching this, I was confronted with the idea that many companies continue to do and to continue to maintain their image and to their brand, even when they get bored by doing this. When you talk about UPS, you have a very fixed idea of what UPS is and what UPS does. And with Google is also that same situation. I would like to ask you guys, Gabby, how do you maintain that? And what do you do? And do you get bored doing it?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me today. I'm super excited to be with you all. And it's really fun to work for a company that is like equal parts like a verb, and it's like, oh, like I'll talk to my mom, she'll be like, hey, I Googled something today, and I'm like, oh, no way, that's so meta, that's so fun. But I think that one of the primary ways that Google in its founding was first branded, and our mantra, that we empathize with them and try to understand that their intent isn't always bad. I think oftentimes like we are skeptical of folks, right? And if they don't agree with us, if they don't share our viewpoints. And so I think that Google's brand, Google's image, and something that is really reflected on every can.
Maria Luisa Boyce with UPS. Though you have your own characteristics and your own branding, to your strengths or the strengths of the company.
Yes, we deliver with us. We usually know, but I have heard this morning, and I know we're going to get a little bit more about the personal branding, but we heard about be prepared, do your homework. I believe very strongly that what they're about to very that we all benefit from it. So collaboration, so all the words that you heard today, it comes together in real business.
And just to add to what she said, I think that was brilliant. And you know, competition is healthy because it makes you better.
Yes.
And so, absolutely right. Thanks for that point.
Let me go back to Maria Luisa, because I wanted to get to this next point, and you touched on it. We're talking about the general situation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how to brand ourselves. And all of you are executives in your own companies, and you have to climb that ladder. And it is not easy. And you have a lot of competitors. And what do you do? And one of the things that I learned reading about all this is that one of the qualities that is very important to have is to be unique, because precisely because of all that competition. Can you talk about that?
Yes.
And I'm going to ask the rest of the panel to talk about that too.
Thank you, Armando. Maybe let me start by saying I was born in Colombia. I grew up living in 5 different countries. I fell in love, got married in the United States. I fell in love with our country and became a U.S. citizen. I am a passionate trade nerd. I used to say a trade junkie, but junkie is not a good word. So a passionate trade nerd. And I felt passionate about the subject matter and about speaking up. And so we heard about that today. And so to your question, Armando, my journey to get here to UPS started when I had my first internship out of college. I studied finance and international relations. I speak 3 languages. But my internship changed my life in terms that you never know who's watching when you're doing the internship. And if you are professional and you do a good job and you show up, you start building your brand. So do you want them to remember you because you always arrive late? or you want them to remember you because you arrived on time, because you were the intern that didn't roll your eyes when someone asked you to go and make copies, right? Or you were, okay, what else can I do? The power of yes. I love our presentation of our keynote speaker. And so that job opened another door, Mexico and the U.S.-Canada border. A immigrant, Latina, that spoke English with an accent, right? And you can let that get into in your mind or make it a difference. And so your personal brand makes a difference. That job opened another job where I work at U.S. Customs and Border Protection at a senior executive level. I was the only Latina in the leadership of that agency, and that added value to the conversation, but I never took for granted any job of what you did. And so getting to UPS to an executive level, have your subject matter expertise, be professional, build on your skill sets. No job that you have is a bad job. Don't ever underestimate any job that you have, even when you're bored. I think on the millennials that were thinking they want to change, right, and move forward, that's how I learned Armando, because it allowed me to be where I am today.
Being unique, just imagine that Coca-Cola is a real thing. Pepsi can be anything in the world except the real thing. How powerful that is. How can we turn ourselves into the real thing? And what can we do to be successful, like Eve? To do things with that enthusiasm and to change and say, well, this is the market, this is the place, and I can be...
An easy journey, and it's an uphill battle a lot of times. And so never giving up is, I think, critical. I think that a lot of us in this room are either immigrants or our parents are immigrants. I was born in Venezuela. My parents brought me here at the tender age of 9. I spoke no English. I had to learn to speak English, and I had to do it well. And I had to have the skill sets to go to college and get a degree that they had. But we are the next generation who has more tools, and so we have to come to the game well prepared. We have to come to the game with, we as minorities, as Latinos, they expect more from us. And so I wish I could say, it's an easy uphill, climb. Well, no, that's not the case. And I think what Marianne intervened earlier and said, we have hard days. And I always say, success, and obviously we're all successful, we're here in the Capitol, is not an uphill, straight line. It's zigzags. And so it's keeping on and never giving up, I think, is critical. And, every way, I come very similar to Eve's journey. I was in local government. I was deputy chief of staff to the mayor of Los Angeles at the tender age of 26. Coming in first, leaving last, doing the job. It's a mayor at the office, but I want to
talk to about Natalie. She said, with that, I wonder if that is also part of this thing. You're talking about enthusiastic. You're yourself and the company on things that you do. Now, what do you do to do things well? What can you do?
For me, it's attention to detail. That's how you do things well. So a real life example right now is while I was sitting out in the audience listening to Eve give an amazing keynote, by the way, is I have a little to-do list. And I know that sounds crazy, but I was working on my to-do list out in the audience. So literally attention to detail. Things all of you all know, and if you're working on the Hill or interning on the Hill, right? Many things, my boss is telling me things, the member, the chief of staff is telling me something. I have my press assistant, hey Dominic, I need your help. Well, I'm not a superhuman, so I have to be prepared. And so what do? I literally write down everything I hear. I carry my to-do list with me everywhere I go, and I impress it on everyone that I talk to. Everyone that I talk to. If you don't have a to-do list, it's time to start getting a to-do list.
If I could just add to that really quickly, I would say, attention is so critical for organization, but also on a personal level of how what you're doing is contributing to your end goal, right? Those are the critical sort of distinctions between you and everybody else. I think your point earlier, Dominic, was brilliant. Like, we got to get out of the mindset of like being smart and being talented is enough, because guess what? Especially in a town like this, there are a hell of a lot of people who are smart and a hell of a lot of people who are talented, but a lot of those people aren't super competent. Hate to say it, right? So being able to sort of tack back and forth between the 1,000-foot view and the 30,000-foot view, I think, is really important. And if you can do that, people will take notice. And then, like you said, it's the thing that will take you from having proximity to the mayor to ultimately earning that corner office, or earning that better salary, or earning whatever it is that's driving you to strive to be better.
Yeah. If I could just, I think that absolutely right, just to piggyback on what you said, being organized is critical. Short term, I have to do what I've done this year, and then I'm going to accomplish this. That's going to be my clear, and I have it on a hardcore calendar. And this calendar is prepared usually in November for the next year, and we keep at it, right? But we have the big things that we want to accomplish that year, and it's hard, and it's on my desk, and it travels.
I think that one of the key things, like trying to think we're on a computer, and what does it mean?
I'm using the right type, but you're gonna start beating yourself up because you didn't accomplish what you had in your list that you already have, and the voices start getting louder, and then you are, and look, step out and work on your core. I call my core, my value in my case is my religion, is my faith. And it's stopping and stopping and stepping outside and look outside the box. I keep going to the box, right? But take breathe and be kind to yourself, because in those moments of kindness is when you realize, okay, I need to readjust, or I need to move forward, or go upward, or go down, or this is not the path I want to keep going, and that's okay. But it takes time, so I know some of you are probably rolling your eyes at me right now. I have a plan, and it's very structured, but be kind. Remember my voice. Be kind to yourself. Take time.
Well, when you have panels like this, it's so nice to see when things fall one thing after the other when they're supposed to. And I was thinking about that in the points that we're listening to, because somebody gave me a mug that said, "What is your superpower?" Yes, well, it has a lot. Know yourselves and know what you do. What is that makes you unique, and what is that you can do better than all the other competitors and all the other people that surround you?
Oh my God, that's a hard question.
I know. That's why I brought that.
So, I guess also is redefined. But I try to juggle a lot of balls and do it the best I can. I had a grandmother who was an incredible wise woman, and my mother's mother, and she used to say to me, she was British educated, and Miss Fitzpatrick used to tell her, good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good is better and your better is the best. And that has carried me from being very young. So I would say multitasking and doing my job well.
Dominique, in your case, there is an interaction, and you are in the middle between the Congresswoman and the press. And we and the press are so nice.
Very.
and many times you have to be the buffer. And you have to deal with those kinds of situations that many times creates conflict. How do you do that? How do you solve that?
Well, so first I'm going to answer the part about it, because I really do feel like everything I've written down in my notes about discussing today, we're hitting. So the panel's doing a fantastic job. And that, I just want to drive home the point that you got to be prepared. Everywhere you walk around can be an interview, a possible potential step up that ladder. So, I was going to give some sage advice and say, make sure that you know what your strength is, one strength, and make sure you know what one shortcoming you have is. So anyways, back to your question, is how do I manage that? And literally being me. The one thing I want everyone in this room to raise your hand and say, I am amazing. I'm not saying that you need to be cocky, because there's a huge difference between being cocky and confident. But that's what I would say, is how do I manage that conflict, right? I'm always true to myself when I interact with the Congresswoman, and I'll preface things that I tell her. We have a unique relationship that's built on trust, that's built on hard work, that's built on results, that's built on judgment. Over 3 years we've worked together. And I come to her and how I manage that is I'll tell her the things she wants to hear, and equally I'll tell her the things that she doesn't want to hear. And at the end of the day, she's the one who's going to call the shots, and I'm going to go out and be the hired gun and do what I'm supposed to do and help deliver that message for her, because her name's on the door, right? Her name's on the wall. It's her office. That's how I manage the conflict. Is I come to her, I'm real, I embrace myself, I know what are my strengths, and I use those strengths to my advantage when I'm talking with the Congresswoman.
And one more. What introspection, what you do to think introspectively about you and your position and who you are and what do? Do you do that often?
I look into myself and determine what course corrections and things of that nature. Is that the question? I sure
yes.
And I think everyone in this audience should be doing the same thing too, right? We should always be looking into ourselves to find where we can make improvements. Again, what are our shortcomings? That shortcoming will never.
Also, taking advantage for you as leaders, as you're thinking of, or rising leaders, where you're going, look at someone at a position that you say, I want to have that job. I like that person. How are you getting those skills or that journey that person got? And that will help you assess, okay, maybe I do need to do an internship here, or I do need to get this job, because then you start building your building blocks. It's going to be your own journey. You're going to make it your own, but you're going to see someone that has successfully done it, and then you can learn the skills that are and I think
museum finds that many of other interns in Washington D.C. are literally being exploited by their employers, doing everything and anything.
Define
40 hours a week, doing everything in the office, from looking for the coffee, everything and anything, especially when you are not paying me. That I have some skills, I have experience. The word professional is always used, and I wonder, how would you define the term professional? What does it mean to be a professional?
Anyone want to take that?
Okay, I'll start, and then I'll ask the millennial to answer too. Guys, because so I'm all generation, right? I'm gonna give you an answer. Let me think this answer. So no one is being, I cannot emphasize you, is an opportunity where you're gaining, you're networking, you're making relationships, you're gaining knowledge, and so that's, even if you're not getting paid, and I know that sounds, from a millennial perspective, sounds terrible, but you're getting paid with knowledge, and you're having the opportunity to be in a work environment. And so, it doesn't sound maybe realistic. It shouldn't matter, because you're gaining a lot of heart, that you bring value. Then you can have a conversation with the employer on that piece and on how what you can do and earn. So that's from the old school mentality. I grew up with my parents. That's another story on the party, but I never said no to it. Arriving on time, dressing appropriately. I don't want to see a distinction of how you one versus the other.
And to your point about being professional, I think that
when I was starting, and I was in college still, and went to work learning how to.
As people.
And your inhibitions, you have to move beyond it. I mean, I'll give you a story. I was, President Obama was going to Mexico on his first trip to meet Peña Nieto, and called and I was the most prepared, and I had my notes, and I was like, I don't think I can say anything. No, I did fine. I did better than fine, because I came, I was prepared, and I showed up. And I worked through my inhibition of, I'm an imposter. What am I doing here? But guess what? I was the most prepared, one of the most prepared people in that room, because I'm trying to fight that imposter syndrome. And so and I do this self-talk all the time, because guess what? I have all these awards, I got all these degrees, and all these things that prove that I'm not an imposter. So, thank you for the question. I think that we all are there, regardless of how high you get. We're all struggling with that because we are the first in so many ways.
Like you start thinking that the others are thinking that what you're an imposter, and so why they're thinking why are you here? Well, you're thinking that why are you here? So it becomes like a unknown. And for me, the most empowering moment was when I let go of what you think of me. I like if you look like a nice person, but I don't care because I'm not going to give you that power over me. I was kind to myself. I'm not going to give that power of me that calling myself imposter. But then I realized, I think what Natalie said, and maybe on the closing remarks, I know my stuff. I did my homework. I'm prepared. I happen to be Hispanic. I happen to be a woman, but I'm the best prepared person in this topic. And so I know we talk about, yes, embrace your but embrace your and brings that. We have to be careful. We have to give steps and processes in place so that businesses have a chance. That's the beauty of our country, right? What see her face probably were saying, oh my gosh, she's out of here. They're going to kick her out. This is it. And so he said, well, explain. And I had my numbers and my statistics and how it worked, and I was prepared. And he said, okay, so let's read it, because no one else wanted to speak up. That was because not I was Hispanic woman or whatever. I was the best prepared person that happened to be Hispanic and happened to understand a small business.